Hello and welcome, everybody. We're here a little bit late for the Abu Dhabi podcast. Tonight it's me and Sintim going through the penultimate round of the season. This podcast has been a little bit delayed as Mr. COVID decided to visit myself, as you might hear in my voice. But yeah, Abu Dhabi. Um, the second last round of the season with multiple championships to be decided yet. And yeah, I think we just head over to Division 1 immediately to have a look. What has changed over there? Well, considering in Miami there were low numbers for Division 1, there was no sprint in the US, but there was one at Abu Dhabi, so it was postponed by a week. And in that sprint, Snipes from pole won the sprint race with Knocker in second and Beeford in third, with Quarrel, Leonardo, Atom, myself, Gibson and Dan rounding out the top eight, with Sam clinching the final point. In the main race, Snipes continued his form and also took the win, so almost a grand slam for him. Blade finished second in the McLaren after starting 13th after an incident in the sprint race, with Beeford coming third. Myself Atom in P4 with Knocker in P5 and Gibson in P6. Then we've got Torpen in 7th, Bourbon in 8th, Treat in 9th and Dan in P10. Further in the points we've got Quarrel, Takubi, TMS Sora and Nardo. Then we've got DNFs for Dave Raptors, Sam Louis, Wells Jack and FG Jacob. In the driver standings, Snipes has clearly extended his championship lead and is now very, very close to wrapping up the championship already in qualifying next week, because he leads with 355 points, with Beeford on 328, so 27 points the gap between the top two now, with only 27 on offer next week. Whilst Jack down on 227, level on points with Blade in fourth. Whilst Jack is ahead of Blade here because of having more race wins to his name. Salaham in P5 on 164 points, and myself in 6th with 135. Torpen still in 7th on 102 points, and Gibson on 98. So those two move past Radius, who sits now in 9th, with Max Susan 10th on 90 points. In the Constructors' Championship, Alpine have now wrapped up that championship for themselves, as they are currently on 582 points, with Mercedes on 474, so just over 100 points the gap. McLaren sit on 335, with Red Bull moving up to fourth with 278, just 1 point ahead of Alfa Romeo. Aston Martin sit in P6 with 259 points, exactly 40 ahead of Ferrari, while Haas are in P8 on 191 points, and Williams in 9th on 158, while AlphaTauri remain at the bottom of the table with 133, and they will need a very, very strong final round of the season to get out of that spot. Well, I mean, Cynthia, you yourself are a bit in a championship fight. Well, a bit you are in a championship fight. And Snipes now here in Division 1 leads with 27 points, while exactly that amount of points is available at Brazil. I mean, even though it's not over until it's over, I think he can sleep well up until Monday, can't he? Because that's a beautiful gap to have going into the final race of the season.
Yeah, obviously, having above a winning margin is probably the best that you can possibly hope for, as it doesn't really secure the championship, but it gives you a healthy margin to say that all you've got to do is score a point at least, just getting the points basically, and you've got it. Obviously, it also counts as where your rivals finish. Obviously, you can't just relax, not qualify, stay at the back of the pack while your championship rivals go to try and win the race. You can't do that because it will just close the gap and prevent you from winning the championship. So you still have to race, but obviously you can do it with less effort as you've got a margin to play with and you've got breathing space.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Beeford himself not the best qualifier, so I think he will need some weekend to turn it around basically, because his only chance is to win the championship on comeback. And we know how consistent Snipes is. He's never finished outside the top 11, which would still award him with 4 points. So that would be enough for him. But I'm sure he also wants to end the season on a race win. But yeah, actually talk a little bit about Snipes. I mean, he's had one win and no pole position up until this week. Also no sprint win. And now he's got it all. He's got the pole position at Abu Dhabi, got a sprint win, and he got a race win. I mean, that's not only helping him considering he extended his championship lead, but that's also a good way to tell Beeford that he's the man this year and that he can quite considerably forget about defending his championship, because that's his this season, isn't it? It's a really a strong wording on track really from Snipes.
Yeah, I mean, as I've probably mentioned in previous podcasts, consistency is the way to winning a championship. You can always have that one fast guy continuously winning races, but if he doesn't have the consistency, he's not going to do as well. Yes, he'll have the wins on his record and maybe a good amount of points, but obviously the consistency, even if you don't keep winning the races, as long as you keep the points consistent, keep a good place consistent, not set yourself a target to try and have, then you're already getting an advantage of just knowing that as long as you stay there, you've got more of a chance of keeping gaining points rather than pushing too hard, overdriving, losing points, crashing out, and doing what you can't afford to do in a championship fight.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, as the constructors is wrapped up, actually, one final bit, a bit towards the midfield here. I mean, the top six are basically set. I mean, Welsh Jack and Blade can change positions, but it's not going to affect too much. And between the top two, as said, hardly any changes will happen. But down there in the battle for P7, there's something going on because it's between Torpen, Gibson, and Mark Souza, really, as Raiders stop playing the game. And those three are gonna race at Brazil next week. And we know how quick Mark Souza is. He got a race win to his name this season already from Monza. And yeah, I mean, Gibson has done well recently. He's got a race win. Torpen got only one podium so far, and that was as France, same as Gibson's race win at France. So only 4 points between them two. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, but that's the most realistic gap that can be overturned really in these last two races. What do you think? Even if you're down there in P8 or P7, you would still want to finish as high up as possible, or are you just gonna would you just rather focus on the next season? So like, okay, this wasn't the one. 2024 is where the focus goes.
As much as you may not be in the championship fight, and depending on where you are in the championship, I feel like always finishing as high as you can to the limit that you can actually get just gives a massive confidence boost going into the next season. Obviously, it gives you the confidence to start stronger and just say, if I do what I did last season, keep it consistent, and I have a chance of winning the championship or at least being one of the top guns to be a contender at the championship. But if you just sort of say, I'm going to focus on next season, obviously, which you can do if it's your preference, um, you may not be as motivated. You may not get the run and gun sort of motivation to push harder as you're focused on next season. I'd always say like try and use the last few races that you have to build the momentum, build the confidence, and start stronger next season, which will obviously help in the championship.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, considering the draft is involved with a system based on positions of teams in the overall constructors. Next time out, I'm sure the team owners at least will have told the teams to score as many points as possible, but sometimes you have the old driver who just, let's say, is not that interested in the team effort. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be interesting between Gibson and Torpen, both of them talented drivers, but obviously the main focus will go into the championship battle between Snipes and Beeford. But as said, Beeford will need a miracle to happen to overturn that 27 points deficit he has to his rival at Alpine. But yeah, that was Division 1, and I think now we have a look at Division 2. In Abu Dhabi, it actually was Caesar 2 Wizard who won the Division 2 race from P12 on the grid, with Beatty Jobbo in second after appealing his penalty successfully. He gets his P2 reinstated, while Jamie Hobbs sits in third, with Avenicus in fourth in the AlphaTauri and Dylan Baxter in P5, which puts Cons into P6 as reserve and Rob Kelly in P7, just ahead of Rage. Gente Bars, the championship leader, in P9, and Afasi Basha in P10, with points scored also for Amos Cole and Beatty Jordan. Further DNFs then for T-Rex Jones, Lou, Drastic, Karakima, and Radoshelm. In the Drivers' Championship, now this means that we've got, theoretically, a three-way fight for the championship. Shantebas still sits in P1 on 278 points, with Jamie Hobbs on 261, so he's 17 points off the lead. Dylan Baxter then sits on 251 points, with Amos Cole in fourth on 183. Beatty Jobber then sits in P5 on 154 points, but his P5 is not secured just yet, with Partiga only 1 point behind on 153 and Rob Kelly on 152. So those three drivers split by 3 points, really. Well, in theory it's 2, but however you count that. Esala Jam in P8 on 144 and Amos Lloyd on 121, so he still sits in the top 10, while Lavenicus just about sits in the top 10 table as well with 103 points, just 1 point ahead of Beatty Jordan, so he's moved past the McLaren driver in the standings. In the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes obviously have already wrapped up the championship here with 528 points to the German outfit, with AlphaTauri in second on 350, while Red Bull is third on 324, and Alfa Romeo on 321, while McLaren move up to P5 on 313 and Ferrari on 305. So between those 5 teams, it's pretty close at the end of the season. Haas sit on 267 points and are kind of in no man's land, as Alpine is too far away to attack them with 223. Aston Martin sit in P9 on 178 points, just 9 ahead of Williams, as they on 169. I mean, that's certainly the more interesting championship, even though it's not very, very close, but still we've got 3 contenders in here. Shante obviously has that lead, but he's got 6 race wins to his name, which is quite a lot, considering he's joined from D3 earlier in the season. But he's struggled since the midway point, really, to keep it consistent. He has had his great moments of wins and podiums, but also a couple of DNFs or even just not participating. And just going into the final race, you reckon Shente might think, well, if I attended 1 or 2 races more, I might have wrapped that title up already and wouldn't need to worry about others at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly agree with that feeling. I think Gente might have a little bit of pressure underneath his skin, but I feel like if he just tries to think of the long game, keep it consistent, he has more than every chance to win the championship. He's got as you said, he's got those wins under his belt. If he can replicate those results, replicate what he did in those races, there's no doubt in saying that he can do it again. Obviously that doesn't discount from all of his rivals behind him that can probably either beat, match, or be just behind him. But it also counts on the race pace. Obviously, qualifying is just the first step. You can get an extra point for being on pole, but obviously, qualifying pace and race pace aren't the same thing. So he could always qualify on pole, but obviously his championship rivals could have better race pace. But as long as he can keep that consistent and just sort of stick with them and manage the time between each other, sort of just damage limitation, then he should be able to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, also looking at his closest rival in Hobbs, I mean, I remember he was in Division 4 last season in the 122 game, and he had one race win across that season and finished second in the championship. I mean, he's got no race win this season, and he is probably, or it's very possible that he's going to finish second in the championship. You reckon he's like the from the other side of the camp of things? Like, I was consistent enough. Like, yeah, it was enough, but I just didn't win races. And the gap from P1 to P2, points wise, is just the biggest one across the whole top 15. You reckon he's gonna be like, I should have maybe risked it a bit more at times to just gain those few more points and just gone for it? Or you reckon at this point you just gotta say, I'm where I am and I'm just gonna go for it in the final race?
I mean, yeah, that can always be a consideration. You always can think, could I have done this or that better? But at the end of the day, as I mentioned before, consistency plays a massive part. Not 8 times out of 10, consistency can win a lot of things, regardless of if you win a race or not. And Jamie is showing that, hasn't won a race this season, and he's still fighting for the title. I mean, if he can't get those wins down, obviously he has less chances of winning it. But that doesn't discount the fact that Gente can have a poor race and retire, which all Jamie needs to do is keep the race consistent and just score as many points as he can, really. But I think, again, if you count back to last game, I just called the game being rubbish. I think a lot of people can agree with me on
Can't
that.
blame you,
But
to be honest.
yeah, I think a lot of people can agree when I say that last game was pretty boring and just downright rubbish. But on this game, again, yeah, just consistency plays a massive part, and Jamie's shown that. I think he's done a great job at doing what he's done, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, as said, you can see it from two views. Like, he could have gone for it and risked it to get more points, but on the other hand, if he risked it more often, he might not even be in contention anymore. So, yeah, it's a very good point. And yeah, as said, I mean, he's gonna go for it one last time, and he has to risk it all now. So, no matter what he could or should have done. So yeah, will be interesting. But also the battle for P5 in the drives between Chobo, Partik, and Rob Kelly. I mean, um, those three are all pretty solid drivers. I mean, they aren't in Division 2 for nothing. But those three actually said the championship fight, like nobody cares about that. That's already kind of done. Like P5 is where it's at. You reckon that's a really good approach from those three to really like put really all the motivation into the battle, because it's not gonna give them any reward at the end except just I've beaten two other drivers. You reckon that's a really good approach, especially going into a new, more calm season in 2024, to push right to the end and test the limits as much as possible?
I mean, I think as much as a championship battle is fun to watch, regardless of how many people there is, you've also got to look further down the field. And if there's multiple cars squabbling over one position, it makes for more of a watch, more of a spectators kind of game. And it also brings it into the situation of this is going to be a good last race. They're going to be sending it, fighting all they can, whilst probably hopefully trying to keep it clean, not trying to push each other into Narnia and all that stuff. But I think it would be a fun watch. It's going to be a good watch because not only is it three of the drivers fighting for one position, it's not a championship fight. which may not seem as fun to watch, but I feel like any driver squabbling for a position is just fun to watch in general.
Yeah, it's racing, isn't it? Just beautiful. And yeah, one more thing actually. I mean, we've mentioned it in previous weeks that the Constructors' Championship for P1 is kind of sorted, but below that, it is so close, especially between like Red Bull, Alfa Romeo, McLaren, and possibly even Ferrari, who could at least jump up one, if not two, or even three positions. So you reckon that those teams will also um, like fight each other hard, considering it is still about a P3, which in theory would be a bronze medal, wouldn't it? So they're gonna give it their all again. Or what do you think? I mean, you've fought with your teammate 10th Cannon for quite a long time during this season. If you always had good teamwork, how have you approached like fighting your way up in the constructors?
I guess it's just pure teamwork. Me and Tenth, we've been just sorting teamwork out, finding what strategy is the best, what type of tactics we can configure, and how we can make them work, really. But obviously, having a team battle plays into so much more hands because you've got to think what are they going to do that we are either going to do or which is different to us. Like, you've got to try and figure out what their game plan is. And you've also got to try and one up their game plan to say if they do this, then we've got to do that better or we can do this different, you know? Um, I think that just makes it all the more fun, really. So I think all that they can do is drive the best they can, stay out of trouble, put teamwork to the best of their ability, and just keep pushing, work together, drag each other along as best they can, try and sort of pull away from the rivals, and that's all you can really say to that.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. Yeah. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting last race of the season in Division Two. That's what I like. Division Two, there are battles everywhere. Like Caesar this week. I mean, nobody expected him to be up there. He originally was Division Three. Now he's won a Division Two race. Jobo's done well the last two races. Has moved himself up the table. And actually, one last thing about Division Two. Um, because I actually find that a pretty interesting stat myself because I've added together the points scored by the top drivers of Division Two since Belgium, and it actually was not Shente or one of the championship contenders right now who scored the most. Like it was this way. So since Spa, Shente scored 61 points. Hobbs has scored 76 and Dylan has scored 74. So Dylan and Hobbs have outscored Gentib around 10 points, 15 points. Colden has scored 75, so he wasn't shy anything of those two. Job has scored 88, so he scored the most. Partik has scored 78 and the Venicus have scored 74 with Rob Kelly on 62. So since Spa, which I think was around 14 or something. So in the last 2 months or so, um, the top eight drivers in Division 2 have scored around about the same amount of points, which I think is quite ridiculous considering they are like almost 100 points off. So it's good to see that the improvements have been made at the last few rounds, and I think we can all be very excited going into next season as well. But anyway, that's Division 2, and now we have a look at Division 3. In Division 3, it was a win for Alpine. It was some Pikachu who won from Geaton Cars in P2 and Sky Fee in P3, so another podium for Williams. Maka in P4 with Eric in P5 and Boosted in P6, while Thomas finishes 7th, AJ Nolan 8th, Cello, who's now left in P9, and Lorne in P10, with Hayes, Natties, and Hanzo also scoring points. In the Drivers' Championship, Boosted now leads with 263 points. And due to Micello not taking part further in this championship, Boosted has also won the Drivers' Championship after wrapping up the Constructors as well. Some Pikachu is second in the championship with 211.5. From Maka in theoretically third on 188.5. Lawn then on 172.5, Shumbashan 160.5, Corin 136.5, so he's certainly moved himself up the table in recent rounds, with Hayes in 7th on 105, AG Nolan on 86, Yassin on 77, and Apex still on 74, rounding out the top 10. In the Constructors' Championship, as said, AlphaTauri have now won that championship with Boosted in the end on himself with 478 points, while Red Bull sit on 438.5. Mercedes are sitting on 380 points, just 70 points ahead of Alpine. Haas remain in P5 on 236 points, being ahead of Ferrari on 219. Williams sit on 196, McLaren on 183.5, and Aston Martin on 174.5, just 3.5 points ahead of Alfa Romeo, who once were third in this Constructors' Championship. Now they are at the bottom in P10, so certainly difficult for them to deal with. I mean, yeah, as said, Micello has now basically stopped participating in a Division 3, which means Boosted has wrapped up the championship. And we talked about consistency before, how important it is to always keep it calm. And at the end of the day, it was enough for him because he's only won one race, which was back at Vegas, which seems a long while ago, at least to me. And his consistency in the end has given him that championship to have enough of a gap compared to some Pikachu going into the Brazilian Grand Prix. I mean, proves your point from earlier, doesn't it? To just keep it consistent and wait for the apples to drop from the tree.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said, 8 times out of 10, consistency is going to win it. You know, all it takes is scoring points, keep scoring those amount of points, keep in the points, maximize the points you can, even if it is a race you don't like, just do it. Probably don't push if you don't feel confident, and just score as many points as you can. As you've seen in title battles before, every point matters, basically, you know? So to keep it consistent is probably one of the top rules that you can follow in league racing or just in general.
Yeah, I mean, not just smashing the car into a wall at any given opportunity in general is good advice, in my opinion. But you never know, some people choose to not do that. So yeah, I mean, Division 3, it's basically sorted now. It's almost over. I mean, the closest battle we probably have is in the Constructors' Championship for the last few positions on the table. I mean, Haas have now obviously passed Ferrari in the last 2 weeks, so they've moved up from 10th to P5. I mean, so Core and Dom have done a really strong job. Alfa Romeo in general, like they've struggled so much now. I mean, if you're second in the overall constructors championship, that's just a downhill path, isn't it? To just drop from P3 to P10 within basically half of a season, and at the end being 300 points off the leaders. I mean, that's not what you want, is it?
No, I think that is pretty much everyone's worst nightmare, you know? You don't want to be at the top at 1 minute and then down the next, you know? That's just the biggest loss in confidence and motivation that you can probably get. And I think a lot of people at that rate would be like, I'm not doing this anymore, you know? I've went from the top to bottom, what's the point in even trying? But all it takes is a flick of mind to think, you
Actually,
can't give up now.
I'm sorry, I've made a mistake. Alfa Romeo didn't drop from third to 10th. They dropped from first to 10th. They've actually led this championship for the first 3 rounds, which I think proves our point even more.
Yeah, as I was literally just saying, it's got to be one of the biggest confidence drops you can have. Not just as your own driver, but obviously with your teammate as well. Not only if you're not performing well, your teammate has to be either at the same page as you or even worse. You've got to think of the mindset they have. At that point, you've just got to talk it through and say, what can we do differently? We need to try and up the consistency, up the points, and just do the best we can. You can never give up at a point where there is races to go.
Yeah, no, certainly agree. But yeah, I'm sure McMess will try his best to improve Alfa Romeo next season. Any aspect, even though they've done well so far, better than most of the teams. But yeah, that's basically Division 3 wrapped up. As said, the championships are sorted now, and they can all head into Brazil relieved, relaxed, and hopefully deliver a decent race. And I think Corey might have a look at winning one last time this season, so we'll have to see on that. In Division 4, it was White Josh who finally won a race. Once again, Alfa Romeo, so they've done well here. With Neb Restrom, after getting pole position, he finished second in Abu Dhabi, with Raven West in third, so the three mates sharing the podium, with Casper in fourth and Dreamer Banjo in P5, with Jesper in P6, so P5 and P6 for Ferrari. Koyi in P7, with Tekot in P8, El Squig in ninth, and Carl in 10th. Further in the points, we've got Tweaky, Scorpion, Ayahuasca, Quell, and Sonic. In the Drivers' Championship, as said, at the top, Raven West. It's boring, he's leading by a mile, but behind him, it's pretty close for second in the championship. White Josh passes Jesper for P2, as the Alfa Romeo driver now sits on 225 points, with Jesper on 223, so only 2 points splitting and those two drivers in the standings. Sonic sits in fourth on 198 points, with Neb on 187, as Bright remains in P6 on 173 points, 5 points ahead of Koyi, who himself is only 4 points ahead of Remote Banjo. Then you've got Ayahuasca in second, Alpha Tauri in 140 points, and Ron in 10th on 127. So that's the driver standings of Division 4. If we have a look at the team standings, Mercedes also here have won the Constructors' Championship with 510 points to their name, while Alfa Romeo 433 in second. Alpine sit in third on 394 and basically secure that position for themselves in the Constructors as well, as Red Bull sit owned in 359, which means that they're almost a race win ahead of Ferrari themselves. AlphaTauri then in P6 on 269 points, while Aston Martin sit on 197. McLaren have got 183, as Williams move up the table to P9 with 150 points, 3 points ahead of Haas. Yeah, so in Division 4, since a couple of weeks, the Drivers' Championship is decided, so on track, there's not too much respect anymore for Raven West. He's got to deal with anything the drivers throw at him. I mean, he's coping well, as it seems, considering he's finished on the podium once more. But yeah, White Josh winning at Abu Dhabi, I mean, there's still something in him this season, seemingly, because it looks like he wants that second place in the championship. And with a win at Abu Dhabi, he's got a good chance to get that second place actually in Brazil, hasn't he? Because yeah, such a boost at the end of the season usually should give you a bit of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't win it, do the next best step and become runner up. Runner up is obviously, again, not what you want to hear, but if it's the best you can do, you've got to take it. And as you said, Raven West at the top, boring. Yeah, he's got to deal with the fact that the drivers will just be like, "Yeah, you've won it now. Just have some fun." They just push him out of the way because he doesn't need to really do anything anymore. He's just racing for the fun of it. But no, I think the best that he can do is just wing it, you know. And as White Josh, he's making the progress. He's took second place. He's just got to keep. He's just got to score a good race in Brazil to sort of secure it. And as long as he can do that, obviously it'll be much better to see that he's made it. None of what I made. I can't even speak English. None of what I just said really made sense, but I'll try and say it again. Being second for him will just be a confidence boost into the next season, and again, boost his confidence to sort of say, I can do better next season. I can be a championship contender, and that's what you can really do. And for his rivals, obviously Jesper and Sonic, you've just got to keep pushing as well. Maximize the points, do the best you can, and don't slip up. You know, if White Josh is to make a mistake, you can just capitalize on that straight away and be more points ahead than him. So he has to make more points to get back.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if anything, at the end of the season, you can still try and get more points than some of your rivals because, as said, I'm sure they might relax a little bit, but they still don't want to drive slow around the circuit for 30-ish laps. So I'm sure also Raven West will try to be as competitive as possible, as we've seen, considering he's been on the podium once again. Also, Ferrari seem to have a good run of form still. Like they obviously had a couple of wins with Jesper earlier, which they couldn't manage recently. But they're still in a fight with Red Bull, aren't they, for fourth in the championship? And maybe that's something to fight for because it's 23 points, which is certainly some gap to close within one race. But they've got two good drivers, haven't they, with Jesper and Banjo Ferrari? And yeah, they might try and even get a win at the end of the season. You reckon that P4 in the championship is something that as well would push you into 2024 with a good feeling?
Yeah, any spot as high as you can get always gives the best amount of motivation to do better next season. Obviously, the higher you get, the more you have to push, the more you have to improve to be able to either score level or higher. You know, I feel like once you set the benchmark for yourself the previous season, you've just got to put in the hours, put in the practice to become a better version of yourself, basically. And that's the just the best way to improve. Just keep practicing, don't give up, and you'll see the results.
Yeah, you can see history repeats itself considering we're basically waffling about consistency and push as long as possible at the end of the season in this podcast. So that's amazing.
I mean, what more can you say? It's
Yeah,
mainly what anyone can do.
yeah.
It's
No, no,
either
no. It's just obviously I've done those ones with Blade last season and also towards I think the end of season two. So just funny to see that at the end of the day we just always end up on keep it consistent. You're gonna do well. So yeah.
no
Um,
doubt all say that for the rest of the divisions. Keep it consistent and you'll do fine.
yeah. Actually, considering we're repeating each other like that continuously, talk about Division 5. Uh,
Hmm.
in Division 5, it was 10th Cannon who won with the fastest lap for, I think, the second time this season. So he's going to be happy, considering he said at the start of the season he's not going to be anywhere near a podium. So he's done it once again. Stone Shuffle finishes in second for Williams with a Frog in third, while Lexus finishes fourth and Andrew in P5 with Becky in P6 and Wargasm in seventh, J Street in P8, Erna in P9, Sintim only in 10th, so his championship lead has been reduced a little bit, with Tybo in P11. In the Drivers' Championship, Sintium still is on the top of the table with 257 points, while Andrew is second on 244 and 10th Cannon on 243. So 14 points splitting the top three. So I've got a three-way title showdown at Interlagos next week. So that's going to be a very, very interesting one. Lexus sits in fourth in the championship with 197 points, 6 points ahead. In P6, we've still got Milkau on 169 and Frisian 161, with J Street on 142 and Earn on 123, just 3 points ahead of McMess. In the Constructors' Championship, Haas are sitting on top of the table with 616 points, and Alfa Romeo in second on 583. So Haas are very, very close to completing the double by not only winning the drivers but also the Constructors' Championship. In P3, we've got Ferrari on 516 points, who are more than 100 ahead of AlphaTauri. McLaren sit in P5 on 386 and Red Bull in P6 on 362, which means they are just 3 points ahead of Mercedes. Williams then sit on 347 points, so they're still not out of this battle for P6 really, with Aston Martin in 9th on 306 and Alpine on 278. Well, your division now. I mean, that was certainly not the perfect Abu Dhabi race for you, was it? You couldn't keep the consistency.
Yeah, I mean, it started off well. The race went well. Took the lead after 5 laps, and safety car came out, and I pulled a Ferrari strategy. And the reason I did that at the race, the pace felt good, so I was like, you know what, I'll stick it out, and I'll try and pull away. What I forgot about Abu Dhabi is the fact that fresh tires is the biggest advantage you can have at that circuit. So not only was I getting swamped, I felt like I had no grip for the laps that I stayed out. So, when I did pit for fresh tyres, I was miles behind. So at that point, it was praying for a safety car and just make up as much time as you can. But I guess, again, consistency has still scored points. I didn't completely DNF and get no points. So obviously, I've still gained, not as much as I'd like, but that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Abu Dhabi, I think there was something in real life as well, wasn't there? One car on used tyres, one car on fresh tyres. I can't remember when that was, but I think there
Yeah, I think
was.
that was quite a historic event, to be honest, wasn't it?
I can't remember, but yeah, at least the better driver won. Anyway, um, yeah, your teammate 10th Cannon has certainly had a great weekend for himself. It could have not gone much better for him. Not only he's won with the fastest lap, but also you've not scored many points, and Andrew has not had an amazing weekend. He finished P5, but still could have been worse. Whether that is compared to you or compared to 10th Cannon. I mean, right at the death, really. He's put himself into the fight for the championship as your teammate, which means it's now two Hasses against one Ferrari. Are you rather happy about that or a bit annoyed because the 1v1 you only have to focus on one driver?
I mean, I think I'm more happy than annoyed. I mean, me and Tenth, we have a good relationship, so we've been talking a lot, and I think we've just been sort of agreeing that as long as we can push, or whatever happens in the last race, it's the best driver who will come out on top, basically. Obviously, with Andrew at the back, it sort of helps that it's two Hasses versus one Ferrari, so we can sort of work together to keep him behind and just sort of pull away. But no, I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he got the win. He kept the consistency like I couldn't. He managed the race well. He pulled the right strategy. He did everything right that day, and I think you can't really fault his efforts.
No, for sure. I mean, he's been in GRL for quite a time now, and it's good to see that he's made some improvements over the course of this season to really put himself into the bullpuck and right into the championship fight. And as said, Haas have got two cars versus one Ferrari, so the Ferrari engines have been going strong in Division 5, and we'll see whether the big boys at Ferrari turn off the BTEC Ferrari engines at Haas, which will be quite interesting. But
Nice little kill switch.
yeah, well, that would be Plan E probably for
Yeah.
exploit. But also for P4, we've got an interesting battle between Lexus and Barbarino. I mean, I remember you early in the season saying you think Barberini is going to be in the championship fight come Brazil, and now he's lost a couple of points after after the pace set by U2 and Haas. Yeah, Lexus versus Barberini. You still reckon Barberini is going to have the advantage going into the last round, or you think Lexus has really also done some strong races recently to keep the P4?
I think from my experience racing Beverino, he has got the pace. He is a strong driver. I think he's just been caught very unlucky. He might be at the point of just thinking, I'm going to do what I can do, you know? I'm not going to push past my limit and I'm just going to do what's best, do what I can do. But yeah, I think Beverino has the pace. He's just got to complete it basically, you know. Lexus, I haven't had much time racing them, but from what I from what I do know, I think it's going to be an interesting battle for P4. So, nonetheless, I think it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And before we move on to Division 7, something that I've only just recognized. I mean, obviously in the top 10 with no McLaren driver, which is interesting because usually in the lower divisions, for some reason, McLaren perform better. But Beckey, we talked about it before. He's got some really good races, got good pace, but he's sitting 14th in the championship. Doesn't that show actually how close and competitive this Division 5 grid is? When a driver who's been fighting for wins at multiple occasions is only sitting 14th in the championship.
I think it's down to the fact of late bloomers, you know. I mean, Becky was sort of a late arrival to this division. If he had started when the whole season had started, I think he would have definitely been in the fight, or at least up there with us, you know. Um, that's me not saying he isn't strong. He is definitely one of the quickest drivers in the division. He can definitely put up a fight, and it was fun battling with him when I did in Abu Dhabi. May not have been the most battles, but I think he does have really strong pace, and to show that he's already climbed up a good amount of positions in the division, it just shows that if he had started at the start of the year, what could he have done?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's Division 5 basically wrapped up for the penultimate round of the season. So we now have a look at Division 7, where it was a win for AlphaTauri and for Quick Mick, who has also got himself the fastest lap of the race after starting in P8. Brans de Banston came second for Mercedes, and Nuki Boy on his debut finished third. Kin One Eye is fourth for Aston Martin, while Mike Reed finished fifth, just ahead of his teammate Ax Flasher. Static in seventh, with Sparky in P8, having a solid result in the desert, with Moss in ninth, Stuart in 10th, and Skion in 11th, with DNFs for Matthew, Mason Roth, Banjo Warrior, and Golden Wolf. In the Drivers' Championship, Skion obviously has already wrapped up the championship with 276 points, while Stube and Flasher both sit on 222.5. Gasser Buchanan then sits in fourth on 185.5, just half a point ahead of Browns the Buns. Moss sits in P6 with 178 points, 3 points ahead of Mike Reed, while Quick Mick sits in P8 with 150 points. Leo Hamilton then still on 124 points in P9, and Mason Rorott with 102 points in P10. In the team standings, McLaren obviously have wrapped up the championship here as well with 462 points, while Haas is just below 400 points in second. Mercedes sits on 299 points, with Alfa Romeo 1 point behind them, so at least here it's a little bit closer than in the overall championship. Ferrari sit in P5 on 282.5, 3.5 points ahead of Williams. In P7 we've got Red Bull on 263.5 and Alpine on 242.5. AlphaTauri then sit in P9 on 219.5, with Aston Martin only 133.5 points being at the bottom of the table. I mean, Division 7 has always been a mix of more experienced or pretty new drivers joining into the game. And it just shows that while we have drivers here like Browns the Buns, Mike Reed, Flasher in the top six who have raced the whole season pretty much, that when you're joining in as a debutant, that doesn't really mean that you can't challenge for anything. I mean, Quick Mick has joined mid-season, um, around Spa, I think that was, and has wrapped up multiple race wins now with even the fastest lap this week. But also Nuki Boy, on his debut, didn't come short of a podium and finished P3 in the end, despite not having the best qualifyings. I mean, even though Division 7 might not be the most competitive, I mean, it obviously is only the seventh strongest division, but it's good to see that continuously new drivers join in and can really compete immediately for the top positions because if you can see you've got some pace, it also probably gives you some extra motivation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I always find it that I think lower divisions can tend to be more interesting than the higher ones because the higher ones is where the skill level is at its peak. Obviously, there's drivers, it's more has to be more tactical than more pace, you know? Obviously, the pace has to be there, but I think higher divisions are more tactical. Lower divisions is more sort of just showing what you can do to try and be promoted up, you know, making your way up the table. Um, you know, people who join late, I think that's just it's just good for them, you know. If they can join late and make a statement, it helps their career, you know, helps them be known, be noticed, been able to move up. You know, like as you said, Quick Mickey's been able to get a few wins, and a good amount of points. That just shows if no matter where you join, again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And he's definitely made a statement in saying if he had started earlier in the season, he could have been fighting for the championship. Um, but yeah, again, I think lower divisions always tends to be more fun to watch because it's the drivers showing they can be quick in their own way. You know, they can make championship fights more spicy, and I think it's just really fun to watch and really good to see the determination that they have.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with you on that front there. And also the amount of different winners we've had in Division 7, like 10 different winners, are really proving themselves out there, which obviously is great to see. And also if you look at the driver standings, I mean it was obviously closer before, like 1 or 2 months ago, but as said at the end, the men just differ from the boys, don't they? And at the end, Sion was the man himself who really picked up the championship. But it's going to be an interesting fight, isn't it, between Stueb and Flasher going into the last race for second in the driver standings because they're now level pegging. And if you can't win the championship, as you said previously, you at least want to finish second and aim for the next highest position. So that will be an interesting battle, won't it, of Brazil?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the lower divisions is where you're going to find it. It's where you're going to find, I guess, the peak of motorsport. Um, the fun battles, showing what they can do, seeing what they can do, you know, what tactics they may be thinking of, you know. And yeah, I think it will be a good fight to watch on for second place. Obviously, fighting for the highest that they can get, bringing in the motivation. Um, it being the lowest division, it is going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And also the battle for third in the constructors between Mercedes, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari, and Williams is going to be very, very interesting considering only 20 points split those four teams. So, yeah, that will be very, very interesting to watch, as you said. Before we say bye bye to Abu Dhabi, really, I think we should have a look into the overall constructors table. I mean, Mercedes have now won the overall constructors championship with 2,628 points. They've had a stellar season, haven't they? And they've really done anything within their power to stay P1 at all costs. They've done so with an absolutely brilliant season. I mean, Alfa Romeo currently sits second with 2,189 points, and Red Bull on 2,057. So, yeah, it looks quite difficult for the Bulls to catch Alfa Romeo right at the end. Alpine, though, now sitting fourth with 2,024.5 points. They are right in a battle with Red Bull, maybe, to get third in the end. AlphaTauri sit on 1,920.5 points in P5, and Haas in P6 on 1,897.5. Ferrari then sit on P7 with 1,890.5, so only 7 points away from Haas, while McLaren in P8 are only 3 points away from Ferrari, and therefore only 10 from Haas. So it's very close down there. Then we've got around a 500 points gap from P8 to P9 because Williams sit in P9 with 1,378 points, and Aston Martin right behind on 1,343. Like it's like this. I mean, as you said previously, you would like to see Haas as high up as possible, as it might be your last race for them, depending obviously on the outcome of the championship and the draft next season. And the chance is certainly there for Haas to at least get P5 in the championship. You reckon gaining 23 points on AlphaTauri is pretty much possible, or you reckon you also will have to put trust in AlphaTauri to maybe have a couple of bad races as well?
It's sort of a mix of both, really. I mean, you always need to put trust in the team ahead of you that they're going to make mistakes and slip up to drop points, but you also need to have faith in all of your teammates in the other divisions that they can put in solid performances and score well for the team overall because you really want to get the most points you can. I mean, as long as they can do what they can do and maximize the points, it's you can only really say well done to them, you know. Um, as long as they don't overdrive and stick it in the barrier somewhere, you know, to lose points, it's all but possible. You know, obviously, again, AlphaTauri, we'd hope that they drop points, and we also can hope that the other division teammates can do their best.
Yeah, for sure. So, as said, Haas's best season already. Will just depend where you guys end up in the end. I mean, AlphaTauri also have been struggling in recent seasons and had a more solid one this time around. They wanted to fight for fourth in the championship, but yeah, that's going to be a bit out of reach to gain 104 points on Alpine, as Alpine had a cracker really, and only 30-ish points behind Red Bull. You reckon Alpine could maybe attack Red Bull at the end because Red Bull kind of had okay weeks recently, but no great ones, and Alpine had an amazing one last week to maybe challenge for that P3.
It's basically what I said for the Haas and AlphaTauri situation. You know, Alpine can only hope that Red Bull drop places and that the Alpine boys put in a solid performance to gain the points. You know, it's the same for Red Bull. They can hope that Alpine drop points and they put in more points. It's sort of just the same situation, really. But I guess it's just what they can do. To be honest, you know, there's
Yeah,
not much
I
really more to
mean,
say.
I certainly agree. As said, it's pretty close. You just kind of try to do your best, isn't it? And then hope that the others just make one or two mistakes. You won't need too many probably, because I said it all is quite close. But you just need to act as a team unit at the end of the day to win something in Formula One. So we'll wait to see on who out of those few puts on the best team effort. And yeah, as said, that will prove to be very, very crucial at the end of the season, or rather going into next season for draft night. So
It's what you
that's
can say. Really, is you can't predict these things with a competitive grid. You know, you just got to see what the end
yeah,
result says.
yeah, for sure. I mean, The only thing you can really say is that Mercedes will certainly score at least 15 points because Raven West is somehow going to find himself on the podium. But except that, as I said, it's pretty difficult, isn't it? So
Yeah,
we'll
very
have
much
to
so.
see. And next season, at least we're gonna go into round one, where all the drivers have different teams, and we've no clue who we are racing anyway because we've just watched them for half a year in one car. So that's gonna be fun for sure. But before we head into season five, we are gonna have one final showdown at Brazil with a Division 1 championship battle, a Division 2 championship battle, and most importantly, a Division 5 championship battle, which is the closest. So we've got in Division 5, Andrew, Cintium, and 10th Cannon. In Division 2, we've got Hobbs, Gente, and Dylan. And in Division 1, it's between Snipes and Bayford. So that's certainly going to be a very, very interesting championship fight as well. So, yeah, until then, we'll see you when GRL returns.